Kehinde listened patiently as Adebimbe recounted the incidents that had happened, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to do. Should I still marry him?" Bimpe asked, tears welling up in her eyes. Kehinde frowned, deep in thought. "Adebimpe, a failed engagement is better than a failed marriage," she said gently. "You need to think about your future. If he has hit you once, he might do it again," she said. Adebimpe and Olumide had been together for 5 years. They met during their university days in Lagos, where they both studied at the University of Lagos. Olumide was studying engineering, while Adebimpe was pursuing a degree in business administration. They shared many common interests, from their love of Nigerian music to their passion for cooking traditional dishes. Their friends often admired their relationship, calling them the perfect couple. After their graduation, Olumide secured a job at a good engineering firm, and Adebimpe started her own small business selling fashion accessories. They worked hard, supporting each other's dreams and growing closer with each other. Eventually, Olumide proposed and Adebimpe happily accepted. Their families were thrilled and the introductions went smoothly. Plans for a grand wedding were set in motion. However, a week before their wedding, everything changed. It started as a minor disagreement about the wedding plans. Adebimpe wanted to have a traditional Yoruba ceremony, while Olumide preferred a more modern approach. The discussion quickly escalated into a heated argument. In a moment of anger, Olumide slapped Adebimpe. She was shocked and hurt, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Olumide immediately regretted his actions. He fell to his knees, crying and apologizing profusely. "I am so sorry, Adebimpe. I didn't know what came over me," he said, tears streaming down his face. He rested his head on her laps, sobbing and begging for forgiveness. Adebimpe was confused and heartbroken. She had never seen this side of Olumide before. Despite the shock, she found herself comforting him, hoping it was just a one-time mistake. Olumide tried to make up for his actions by sending her lots of money and buying her a new car. He promised it would never happen again. Adebimpe was conflicted. The days following the incidents were filled with uncertainty and fear. She replayed the slap in her mind over and over again. Olumide's apologies and gifts did little to ease her troubled mind. She found herself questioning everything about their relationship. Should she still marry him? Could she trust him again? No one in her family knew about the slap, and Adebimpe was too ashamed to tell them. Her mother, Yetunde, had always praised Olumide, calling him a perfect son-in-law. Her father, Baba Akin, admired Olumide's ambition and success. Disappointing them felt unbearable. She had invested so much in the wedding preparations. The venue was booked, the invitations sent out, and the attire chosen. In her state of confusion, Adebimpe turned to her best friend, Kehinde. Kehinde had been her confidant since childhood. They had grown up together in Ibadan and shared many secrets over the years. If anyone could give her honest advice, it was definitely going to be Kehinde. They met at a quiet place in Lagos. Kehinde listened patiently as Adebimpe recounted the incidents that had happened, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to do. Should I still marry him?" Bimpe asked, tears welling up in her eyes. Kehinde frowned, deep in thought. "Adebimpe, a failed engagement is better than a failed marriage," she said gently. "You need to think about your future. If he has hit you once, he might do it again," she said. Bimpe knew Kehinde was right. The logical part of her understood the danger of staying with someone who had already shown a violent side, but her heart ached with the thought of cancelling the wedding. She couldn't bear to disappoint her family and friends. The weight of their expectations pressed heavily on her shoulders. "But what about my family?" Bimpe whispered. "They will be disappointed." Kehinde reached across the table and took Bimpe's hand. "Your safety and happiness are more important than their disappointment. You deserve to be with someone who respects and loves you, not someone who is going to hit you." Bimpe nodded, but the conflict inside her remained unresolved. She left the cafe with a very heavy heart, still unsure of what to do next. The wedding was a few days away, and the pressure to make the right decision was overwhelming. Despite her doubts, Bimpe decided to go ahead with the wedding. She kept hoping things would get better and that the incident was a one-time mistake. The days leading to the wedding were filled with last-minute preparation and family gatherings. Yetunde and her husband Baba Akin were busy hosting relatives who had traveled from different parts of Nigeria for their children's big day. Everyone was excited and the atmosphere was charged with joy and happiness. 2 days before the wedding, another argument erupted. This time, it was about the seating arrangement for the reception. Bimpe wanted to place her close friends near the front, while Olumide insisted on seating some of his business associates there. The disagreements quickly turned heated. In a fit of anger, Olumide slapped her again. Adebimpe's world seemed to crumble. She felt a mix of shock, anger and despair. The reality of her situation hit her hard. She was about to marry a man who had hit her twice in less than a week. The fear and confusion were overwhelming. She thought about calling off the wedding, but the image of her family's disappointed faces haunted her. Olumide was immediately remorseful. He cried, holding her hand, and begged for forgiveness. "Bimpe, my love, I'm so sorry. I don't know what got into me. Please forgive me. I will never do it again," he pleaded. Feeling trapped by her fear of disappointing her family, Bimpe found herself forgiving him once again. She told herself that if it would happen again, she would never forgive him. This was going to be the last time. She convinced herself that things would change once they were married. The pressure from her family and the expectations of the guests who had already arrived weighed heavily on her. The day of the wedding finally arrived. Adebimpe tried to push her doubts aside and focus on the ceremony. She wore a beautiful traditional Yoruba attire, and Olumide looked handsome in his dashing agbada. The church was decorated with colorful flowers and the guests were all happy. The ceremony was grand with music, dancing and celebrations. Yet, as Adebimpe stood beside Olumide exchanging vows, a part of her felt disconnected. She forced herself to smile and play the role of a happy bride, but inside she was filled with anxiety and fear. She wondered if she had made the right choice. The memory of the slaps lingered in her mind, casting a shadow over the joyous occasion. After the marriage, life for Adebimpe did not get better. In fact, it got worse. The honeymoon period was brief and soon overshadowed by Olumide's temper. The cycle of violence and apologies began to take shape. Olumide would hit her during arguments, only to follow with lavish gifts and tearful apologies. The first time after their wedding, it was over something as trivial as Adebimpe wanting to visit her parents. Olumide had been in a foul mood and in a fit of anger struck her. The next day, he bought her a diamond necklace and begged for forgiveness. Adebimpe, still hoping for a change, accepted his apology. Weeks turned into months, and the pattern became familiar. Olumide would get angry over small things, hit Adebimpe, and then shower her with expensive gifts. He bought her designer clothes, jewelry, and even a trip to Dubai. Each time, his apologies were tearful and filled with promises that would never happen again, but he always did. To make matters worse, Olumide started cheating on her openly. He would come home late, reeking of another woman's perfume. Sometimes, he didn't bother to hide it. He brought his mistresses to their home, flaunting his infidelity in Adebimpe's eyes. She felt humiliated and very heartbroken. Adebimpe cried often, feeling trapped and alone. She confided in Kehinde, who was furious about the situation. "Bimpe, you need to leave him. That is not love. This is abuse," Kehinde said firmly. But Bimpe couldn't bring herself to leave. She kept hoping that things would change. She clung to the memories of the good times they had shared, believing that the Olumide she fell in love with was still there somewhere. Her fear of disappointing her family and the societal pressure to maintain her marriage weighed heavily on her. Kehinde continued to urge her to leave. "Bimpe, your safety and happiness are more important than societal expectations. You deserve better, know what you are going through." Bimpe knew Kehinde was right, but the thought of starting over was daunting. She felt paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. The cycle of abuse continued, with Olumide's violence becoming more frequent and more severe. The expensive gifts and apologies no longer had the same effect. They felt like empty gestures, masking the deep-rooted issues in their relationships. A few months later, Adebimpe discovered she was pregnant. She was both excited and scared at the same time. She hoped this would be the turning point for Olumide. Maybe the news of a baby would soften his heart and bring back the loving man she once knew. When Adebimpe told Olumide about the pregnancy, he seemed genuinely happy. He hugged her, lifting her off the ground, and for a moment it felt like the old days. Olumide promised to be a better husband and a good father. Bimpe clung to these promises, hoping they would come true for her. For a while, things actually improved. Olumide was more attentive and caring. He took her to prenatal appointments and even started planning for the baby's arrival. They shopped for baby's clothes, furniture, and other general items. Olumide seemed excited about becoming a father, and Adebimpe felt a glimmer of hope. However, this period of happiness was short-lived. The arguments began again, and with them, the violence. Olumide's temper flared over the smallest things, and one evening, when Adebimpe accidentally burned the dinner, Olumide slapped her so hard she fell to the ground. The next day, he bought her an expensive bracelet and apologized, but the cycle of abuse continued. Adebimpe felt trapped. The baby whom she had hoped would bring them closer seemed to be making things worse. She confided in Kehinde again. "I thought the baby would change him, but it's only getting worse," Bimpe said, her voice trembling. Kehinde was adamant. "Bimpe, I have told you time without numbers. You need to leave. This is not safe for you or the baby. You deserve better than this," she insisted. Adebimpe nodded, but the fear of leaving still gripped her. She kept hoping that things would improve, that Olumide would realize the harm he was causing and change his ways. The thought of raising a child alone also terrified her. She felt caught between her fear of staying and her fear of leaving. As the pregnancy progressed, the abuse did not stop. Olumide continued to hit her, often blaming her for his outbursts. He would accuse her of not caring enough, not doing things right, or simply being a burden. He accused her of eating too much and sleeping too much. Adebimpe said she was only reacting to the needs of the growing child in her. But each time, he followed the violence with gifts and apology. The pain and fear lingered, but she still continued to remain with him. Adebimpe tried to focus on the baby, talking to her growing belly and imagining a future for them both where they would be happy with Olumide in their lives. She hoped that once the baby was born, Olumide would change. She clung to the hope even as the reality of her situation grew darker. One night, Adebimpe and Olumide had a particularly bad argument. It started over something small. Olumide was late coming home and Bimpe asked where he had been. His anger flared instantly and the argument escalated quickly. Olumide's voice grew louder, filled with rage, and Bimpe felt familiar fear rise within her. As she tried to calm him down, Olumide's anger turned physical. He pushed her against the wall and slapped her. When she tried to protect her belly, he grew even angrier, accusing her of not listening to him. In a fit of uncontrollable rage, he hit her hard in the stomach. She fell to the floor, clutching her belly, pain overwhelming her. The world seemed to blur around her as she felt a sharp, unbearable pain. She cried out, tears streaming down her face. The next few hours were a haze of agony and fear. Olumide, realizing what he had done, panicked and rushed her to the hospital. At the hospital, doctors quickly attended to her. Despite their best efforts, the trauma was so severe. She lost the baby. Adebimpe lay in the hospital bed, numb with the grief and pain. Her world had shattered completely. The baby she had hoped would bring joy and change was now gone. Her mother, Yetunde, arrived at the hospital as soon as she heard the news. She was heartbroken to see her daughter in such a state. Adebimpe, my child, Yetunde whispered, tears in her eyes. You are coming home with me. You will not go back to that man. Adebimpe was too weak and devastated to argue. She knew her mother was right. The reality of her situation had become painfully clear. She could no longer live in fear and abuse, and Olumide had taken everything from her, their love, her dignity, and now her child, the thing that meant the whole world to her. Yetunde stayed by her side, offering comfort and support. Adebimpe felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Leaving Olumide meant facing the shame and disappointment of a failed marriage, but staying meant risking her dear life. The loss of her baby was the final push she needed to make the decision. She had been too afraid to make it before, even after Kehinde had warned her. After a few more days in the hospital, Adebimpe was finally discharged. Yetunde brought her home, taking care of her and helping her through the initial days of recovery. Adebimpe was so broken, but she knew she had to be strong. She had to rebuild her life, free from the circle of abuse. After Adebimpe left Olumide, he tried desperately to win her back. He bombarded her with gifts, a bouquet of her favorite flowers, stacks of cash, and even a brand new car parked outside her mother's house. Each gift came with a heartfelt note, begging for forgiveness, promising change, and expressing deep remorse. But Bimpe remained resolute. The pain of losing her child was too fresh and too unbearable. She couldn't erase the image of Olumide's violence from her mind. The gifts, once symbols of his love, now felt like hollow gestures. They could not mend the broken trust or heal the deep wounds in her heart. She refused to see him or respond to his messages. Yesterday her mother acted as a shield, intercepting his calls and returning his gifts. Adebimpe needs time, she would say firmly to Olumide whenever he showed up unannounced. Yesterday's resolve matched her daughter's. She was determined to protect Adebimpe from further harm. Olumide's attempts grew more desperate as the weeks passed. He sent letters filled with apologies and promises to change. He pleaded with mutual friends and family members to intervene on his behalf, but Bimpe remained steadfast in her decision. She knew that going back to him would only lead to more pain and disappointment. In his despair, Olumide turned to Tayo, his longtime side chick. Tayo had always been aware of Adebimpe's existence, but had chosen to ignore it for the sake of her relationship with Olumide. She enjoyed the perks of being with a wealthy man, despite knowing she was not his only woman. Initially, things seemed normal between Olumide and Tayo. They went on dates, traveled together, and enjoyed each other's company. Tayo reveled in the attention and gifts Olumide showered upon her. She believed she had finally won him over completely. There was no longer another woman in the way. However, it didn't take long for Olumide's violent tendencies to resurface. One evening, during a heated argument over dinner, Olumide slapped Tayo across the face. Shocked and frightened, Tayo recoiled from him. Unlike Adebimpe, who had endured Olumide's abuse for years, Tayo refused to tolerate it. The next day, she contacted the police and filed a report against Olumide for domestic violence. She sought refuge with her family, fearing for her safety. The news spread quickly, shocking those who knew Olumide as a successful businessman and seemingly devoted husband. Olumide's world began to unravel. The police investigation was swift, fueled by Tayo's detailed accounts and evidence of previous incidents. He was arrested and charged with assault. His reputation tarnished overnight. Despite the chaos and legal proceedings, Olumide remained defiant, insisting it was a misunderstanding and that Tayo was exaggerating. But the damage was done. His actions had caught up with him and the consequences were severe. Olumide's trial moved swiftly through the courts, with Tayo's testimony and evidence against him. He was found guilty of domestic violence. The news spread quickly through their social circles and beyond. Friends and acquaintances were shocked to learn the truth about Olumide's dark side. Adebimpe followed the proceedings from a distance. She felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and vindication. Relief because she was finally free from his abuse. Sadness for the lost years and the baby she would never hold. And vindication because her decision to leave was validated by the court's verdict. Yetunde, her mother, held her close during those tumultuous days. "You did the right thing, my love," she would say, her voice filled with pride and happiness. Adebimpe nodded, grateful for her mother's constant support. Olumide's arrest marks the end of a chapter in Adebimpe's life, one filled with pain, fear, and uncertainty. She could now begin to imagine a future without constant fear of violence. The legal system had delivered justice, but the scars of her past remained. With Olumide behind bars, Adebimpe embraced her new life with renewed determination. She focused on healing and rebuilding herself, slowly unraveling the emotional trauma she had endured all these years. Yetunde and Kehinde remained her pillars of support and strength, offering her all the love she needed. Adebimpe found solace in simple routines: her morning walk, cooking her favorite meals, and reconnecting with old hobbies. She enrolled in therapy to help process her emotions and regain her sense of self-worth. Each day brought new challenges, but also small victories in her journey towards healing. Kehinde, her lifelong friend, still stood by her side through it all. "You are so strong, Bimpe," she would often say, admiration in her voice. "You've shown so much courage in leaving him." Adebimpe's story became a lesson for many who knew her. Her bravery in leaving an abusive relationship resonated with others who were silently suffering. She spoke at local community events, sharing her experience and urging others to seek help. Her words carried weight, offering hope and empowerment to those in very similar situations. The story of Adebimpe highlights the profound moral lesson that leaving an abusive relationship requires immense courage and strength. It underscores the importance of listening to those who genuinely care and support, like Kehinde and Adebimpe's mother, Yetunde, who provided love and guidance for her all through her journey. Adebimpe's journey also emphasizes that justice and freedom from abuse are achievable through perseverance and seeking help. Her story serves as a beacon of hope, encouraging others in similar situations to prioritize their safety and well-being, even in the face of societal expectations or personal fear. Thanks for watching this captivating story on African Stories and Folktales. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories. Thank you.